Subscribe.
You guys are gonna call me crazy, but Club Penguin Elite Penguin Force on the DS is actually pretty fun. In no universe would I expect a licensed kids game by Disney to not be awful, but here we are. We have a fun little point-and-click adventure game. Honestly, something I think the DS is really good for. I had a fun trip down memory lane going through the adventure. My favorite aspect of this game is that the art style is just like the source material, and as such I found it fun exploring the island from this new perspective. I also like how they used puffles as a puzzle solving tool. They felt kind of underwhelming in the original Club Penguin, so it was nice to see them actually doing stuff in this game. Now I don't want to get too ahead of myself. Elite Penguin Force is still an incredibly bare bones video game. There isn't much to do here besides the main quest. You get to explore the island, sure, but it feels remarkably empty and kind of eerie in that sense. The graphics are fine, except for whenever they start using 3D models. Then there's the music. Straight up, the music sucks. The compositions aren't bad. They end up being okay most of the time, but the quality of the sounds they used is terrible. I usually just turn the sound off when I play. At the end of the day, I enjoyed my time with this, but I gotta say, on almost every front, it's barely holding itself together.
6 out of 10!
LEGO Battles was my jam as a kid. It's so unique as a LEGO game. I don't really play RTS games, but LEGO Battles was able to simplify it down to a level I can understand and enjoy. It also has a pretty decent list of scenarios to choose from, with their own maps and missions. It's a decent amount of content. The multiplayer mode was also a lot of fun. The developers were also able to inject some more traditional LEGO design in an otherwise alien genre. There are still a lot of collectibles hidden around that can unlock stuff, and I still also get a kick out of the cutscenes, which have that signature silent LEGO comedy. And while I'm still praising this game, can I mention that some of the songs here actually kinda slap? Not all of them. A lot are pretty repetitive, but there are some gems in here. Nowadays though, this game does feel kind of dated. It has that vibe of an old forgotten idea in LEGO's catalog. The DS heavily limits this game's potential as well. In theory, it works. Substitute a mouse with the touchpad, buttons for the camera, and more general information will fill the top screen. But this is the DS we're talking about. LEGO Battles never fails to give me hand cramps because of how you have to hold the system to play. And when my hands are hurting, all the other problems start to irk me more. The characters move pretty slow. The AI is incredibly dumb and they get stuck all the time. The graphics are fine, but at a point I can tell that different levels are just the same assets with different skins. Still, I can't not like this game all things considered. It has too much charm.
7 out of 10!
The unfortunate truth of LEGO Battles Ninjago is that it missed the mark on what made the first game so fun, at least for me. The biggest drawback is that there's only one real battle going on throughout the course of this game, the ninjas versus the skeletons. I like Ninjago as much as the next guy, but this ain't it. I get why there's only one real conflict, as this was before any other villains were introduced, but it still doesn't match the original game's variety. Also, the first LEGO Battles had to make those scenarios interesting, as they were just generic castles, pirates, and astronauts at the end of the day. But Ninjago doesn't even try to convince you to like these characters. They just assume that you know them. They also didn't really expand the gameplay that much, if at all. It makes the lack of variety in presentation all the more apparent. The only characters you really need to care about are the main ninjas and the main skeletons. The other minions don't mean that much in the grand scheme of things. At least LEGO Battles required a more well-rounded squad. LEGO Battles Ninjago is still LEGO Battles, it just feels lesser. You can still have fun sending armies to fight and building bases, but honestly I never really do when the original does that and more.
5 out of 10!
Mario Kart DS was my first Mario Kart, and boy did it leave a great first impression. It's one of my favorites in the series, and I know it's not the best, but I still think it has a lot of great qualities. The most obvious thing to me is the multiplayer. Download Play allowed people to play anywhere, and you didn't even need a cartridge, or even an internet connection back then. I raced people on the playground, on the bus, I raced my neighbors, I even got a couple games with random people on car rides. That's how big this game was, and I was a fiend for it. I loved the characters, the tracks, and for some reason I especially loved all the different karts. One of the biggest things I miss in new Mario Kart games is a big selection of karts. When you don't have to template every kart, you get more opportunities for creative ideas. Like Dry Bones in a freaking tank, that was my choice. The music is all amazing, not a single song I dislike. People like to bring up the mission mode a lot, and it certainly was a lot of fun, but can we talk about the custom emblem editor? I might have spent just as much time in the editor as in the actual races. I love all the tracks, but I do have to admit some of them feel a bit basic by today's standards. This was before gliders and anti-gravity and even the trick system, so while the tracks are fun for pure racing, they do miss out on those those moments. The graphics haven't aged that well either. I think they have a bit of charm still, but those jagged edges have never been more apparent. Still, all the courses, karts, characters, the multiplayer, I love pretty much everything about this game. I can't be the only one that wore out their R button with this game either. I must admit that some games do it better. Not many people are there for download play anymore, but if you feel like whipping out that DS, hit me up. I'm always down to play.
8 out of 10!
Right after I beat Mario and Luigi Partners in Time, I went to my spreadsheet and put down a 9 out of 10. Now, as I'm writing this review, trying to remember my experience with it, I'm coming up with a lot of blanks. I remember this game taking me a while to beat, so I'm not surprised. I picked it up when I was a kid, got bored about halfway through, and didn't pick it back up until much later. Even then, I was pretty busy, so I couldn't play it all the time. This is why I don't play a lot of RPGs. Seeing the end credits takes too long, to be blunt. Now that I think about it though, there were a lot of things I liked about this game. The world was really cool. I had never before seen a Mario setting with such character. It was awesome to see where the Toads lived, the Yoshis played, and the Shy Guys lurked. I wasn't as enamored with the story, but man, the writing was really good. There were funny character interactions, ruthless villains, and I specifically remember the forest area where if you walked up to the Toads in the trees, their faint dying voices could be heard. It's creepy. It was so far from your standard Mario fare, and that's why I liked it so much. The locales, the characters, the battle system was pretty fun too. I like the ability to counter enemy attacks in real time. I remember some sections feeling a bit slow, which is probably why I never gave it a 10. Now that I've recalled more about Partners in Time, can I still call it a 9? I don't really know, but it's my review, so why not?
9 out of 10!
Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games is a nice collection of mini-games. That's really about it. There's no story mode like in the later handheld entries. There isn't even really a party mode like in London 2012. There is Versus via download play, which can be fun. There are a lot of collectibles like songs and fun facts about the respective franchises. I guess I should actually talk about my experience with this game, huh? Look, I had fun, but there really isn't more to it. While the minigames are fine, they're just that, minigames. They don't hold your attention for very long. The dream events are a little better. I like the dream running event where you're basically playing Mario Kart on foot, but my hand gets tired from all the scrubbing with the stylus. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games is fine if you want to kill some time. Even with all the missions and collectibles, it still doesn't hold my attention for very long, and I don't think it's meant to. Otherwise you get some serious carpal tunnel. I had it when I was a kid and liked it, revisited it when I was older, blasted through the missions and never looked back. Fun, but not much more than a distraction.
6 out of 10!
Pokemon Black was the last Pokemon game I played before I took my first hiatus. I think I was getting burnt out on the formula. Specifically with Black and White, the changes made were either stuff I didn't really care about or things I didn't want them to change. The entirely new Pokédex was an example of the latter. At the time of originally playing this game, I was a young kid who had only just gotten familiar with the giant cast of Pokemon. I was just picking out my favorites. After playing Gen 4, I was excited to see some of them return. And none of them did. I also didn't really like a lot of the new designs. A dog, some gears, a bag of garbage. Okay, the last one I thought was kind of funny, but I didn't really like the new designs overall. There was something about them that just wasn't really appealing to me. It's possible this distaste was also related to the new setting, which I didn't really like that much either. But still, Pokemon Black and White are solid entries. After all, it's Pokemon. If there's anything Pokemon's known for, it's consistency. I still got to make a team, battle gyms, defeat the big bad, and more. Exploring, discovering new Pokemon, and fighting those big fights, whether they be gyms or rivals or what have you, it's all fun stuff. So I still had that to fall back on. It's just that the changes they made to this one didn't really grab me.
7 out of 10!
Pokemon HeartGold just hit all the right spots for me. The mechanics are all from Gen 4, which was my first generation of Pokemon, so it felt familiar. The pacing through the world felt pretty seamless. I can't really recall a time where I felt like I had to struggle to get to the next section, and I mean that in a good way. In my opinion, Pokemon should feel like a nice jaunt of an RPG, where it isn't really about the battles, it's about the region, its characters, and its roster of Pokemon. HeartGold and Soul Silver allow you to do just that, and the best part is that they let you do it twice. Yes, the main reason this is my favorite game is because you get to explore both Johto and Kanto, and I believe Kanto is still at its full size, but it's been a while so don't quote me on that. Still, when I played this game as a kid, I was so excited that when I beat the final 4, the game wasn't over. I got a whole new set of gyms and Pokemon to find and battle. It's literally 2 Pokemon games in one. I don't know how anyone could be mad at that. But it is still Pokemon. The same running through grass, swerving around trainers, grinding to even out your team, which is why it doesn't feel right giving HeartGold a perfect score. Even at its core, the Pokemon formula is flawed, but if you're gonna pick a game to play, I think this is it.
9 out of 10!
My first Pokemon game. Big nostalgia alert incoming. Platinum is certainly flawed, but being the game I grew up with, I don't really have a problem with most of it. It's just part of playing this game that I grew up with. I will say though, this is my favorite generation in terms of the designs. Leafeon is my favorite evolution, Giratina my favorite legendary. I love all the starters, Torterra is up there with one of my favorite Pokemon, period. I also like the characters in this game. I never made it to Cynthia when I was a kid, so she was just this random, mysterious, nice lady. Little did I know. Everyone hates on the rival, but I think he's fine. I definitely saw a bit of myself in him, so maybe that's why. Even the enemy team is cool. Yeah, they're comically evil, but they're also all dumb enough to be thwarted by a child just learning to train their Pokemon, so I think it fits. Nostalgia aside, Gen 4 Pokemon can be a bit slow. Platinum isn't as bad as Diamond and Pearl, but speeding up battles can't really help the world design as much. There are some long, boring stretches as you go through Sinnoh. The trek up to the 7th gym comes to mind, trudging through the snow only for my grass starter to get their ass whooped by Candace. It's true that Pokemon Platinum is one of the hardest games for me to look at critically. It was my first Pokemon experience and I was sucked right in. Every now and then when I play it, that feeling comes back, but it's still that very basic RPG premise that every Pokemon game is. Even with that in mind, I do still head back every now and then. And if you find yourself the opportunity to play it, I can hope that your experience would be similar to mine.
8 out of 10!
Scribblenauts is a game that I loved as a kid, but coming back to it more recently to finish it, it was rough. Scribblenauts was a novel idea for a game. Give the player a notebook and let them spawn anything they can think of. Imagine the possibilities. How could they even manage that? On the DS no less. Well, the short answer is that they didn't. The truth is that the pool of items you can spawn is actually pretty small. It makes sense. You can't make a sprite for literally every object known to man, but it's still disappointing when the whole setup is just that. A lot of the items end up functioning or even looking exactly the same. It also creates a real challenge for level design. How can you make a challenging mission when the player has that much power? Again, you can't. If you ever decide to play this game, the only words you need to know are rope, helicopter, and gun. These items alone break so many levels. But I still have to commend Scribblenauts for even attempting such a crazy idea. I had a lot of fun as a kid messing around in the sandbox, making towns, watching creatures fight, and more. Because when you're not forced to complete an objective, you don't have to break down this game's thin facade. It's a cool idea for a game, it can be fun, but nowadays it's not much more than a footnote in the DS library.
5 out of 10!
The concept behind Sonic Rush must have been, what if we took 2D Sonic speed and cranked it up to 11? If this was the aim, I'd say mission accomplished. This game is fast, really fast. For better and for worse, Sonic Rush is hell-bent on delivering the adrenaline. The boost allows you to go from 0 to 100 in a split second, and it means there isn't any time to slow down. I was going from one obstacle to the next so fast it was hard to really react to what was in front of me. A lot of the times when I was supposed to slow down, I'd run right into my death because how can you not with a power like that? It means there's some trial and error with this one, but I didn't really mind it this time around because as soon as I fell down, I'd be back on my feet and boosting off again. In my mind, this whole game is a blur. Story? What story? I just want to get to the next stage and blast off again. I suppose I should talk about some other stuff though. That story is perfectly fine. Very basic, but I think Blaze is a cool character. The graphics are okay, it's a little jarring seeing 3D character models standing in 2D environments, but the artwork is decent enough for me not to really care. But hey, how about that music? Super energetic breakbeats, very fitting of the game's pace, and there's a lot of earworms in here that you won't forget. My favorite being Blaze's theme. I think what makes Sonic Rush speak to me is that unrestrained pace and energy it has. Its level design isn't perfect, nor is the graphics, the story is okay, the bosses are the same. To me, as long as I'm able to make it through the stages at breakneck pace, I'm down, and this game does deliver.
8 out of 10!
I had so much fun with Mario 64 DS as a kid. It was the perfect starter video game. I could take it anywhere. Each star was a little marker of progress I could make on bus rides to and from school. And there were so many stars and other things to do that it just felt like an endless chest of fun. If you look for the original Mario 64 in my uploads, you won't find it. That's because I think 64 DS does a fine job recreating the experience. No, it doesn't have analog controls, but it clearly doesn't need them. I'm not a speedrunner, so I'll take the more modern aesthetic aesthetic and extra characters any day over the original. Also, the minigames are a lot of fun. Whichever version you prefer, Mario 64 is bound to give you a good time. I'm finding it hard to describe, but one thing I can associate with this game is that feeling of constant discovery. There aren't really that many levels when you think about it. Some are pretty small. This means that the developers had to make use of all the space. There's always something around the corner, a red coin, a boss, an enemy, maybe even a star. Mario 64 really squeezes all it can out of its space, and it still manages to make every level feel like its own vignette of a world with NPCs and history. I used to think about what the creatures in these worlds would do before Bowser came. The only things I didn't much like about Mario 64 DS was the camera and some of the stars. Mostly the repeat ones like the 8 red coins and the 100 coins and the silver stars. Also, Rainbow Cruise is just a bad stage. It has no real cohesion like the other levels do, it's just a random assortment of platforms and a magic carpet ride. But hey, Mario 64 DS is still a lot of fun. There's always something to collect, some nice environments to immerse yourself in, some good music to enjoy. It never really gets too crazy annoying, just letting you enjoy the ride all the way through to the end.
9 out of 10!
The more I think about Super Monkey Ball Touch and Roll, the less I like it. When I first beat it, I was super excited. I made it through my first Monkey Ball, beat all the challenges. A little bit after, I remembered how bad the controls felt. Went back to my spreadsheet and lowered the score. A while after that, I realized I wasn't having much fun while playing. I was more happy to see that it was over. So I lowered the score once more. Now, I think Monkey Ball Touch and Roll is completely middle of the road. I like how it looks and sounds, the controls work fine, but I just didn't have that much fun scribbling back and forth to keep my monkey from rolling off a 1-inch wide platform. The touchscreen sounds like a fine way to control this game on paper, but in practice, the lack of resistance you get from swiping across the screen led to a ton of mistakes. You can also tilt the stage in any direction, but the touchscreen only has 4 edges, so I didn't feel like I could really control it how I wanted to. I don't really have a problem with the stages themselves. I feel like Monkey Ball should work perfectly on a handheld since the stages are so small. The minigames would be a nice break in the action if they weren't so boring. I also played this way after the DS was out of style, so I didn't get to play any multiplayer. Super Monkey Ball Touch and Roll should have worked great in theory, but in practice I find it just mediocre. Now let's move on before I think too hard and lower the score again.
5 out of 10.
I put a lot of hours into Yoshi's Island DS as a kid. I only remember good things, but when I started cleaning up this list, I saw that I hadn't beaten it. I couldn't remember why until I tried it once again. Wow. What a difficulty spike. The vast majority of Yoshi's Island DS is as easy as can be, but then those last few levels come in and punch you in the gut. I felt betrayed. I love this game, so why was I so pissed off? But honestly, when everything is taken into account, I still like this game. I love the aesthetic of Yoshi's Island. It feels, and I mean this as a compliment, that I could have drawn up those characters and settings and made my own game. The music too is great. Maybe I'm nostalgic, but I can bounce to pretty much every tune on here. Even the enemies have their own quirks. They're not just bland old Goombas. They make little noises, they have funny walk cycles, and they want to steal your child when you're not looking. The flutter jump is also an ingenious tool to give to beginners of platform games. It doesn't make much sense for Yoshi to frantically wave his arms and somehow gain height, but it works because I'm the one stressing out over missing a jump. If it were me, I'd be kicking my feet trying to get up too. The real gameplay of Yoshi's Island DS isn't that crazy. The multiple babies you can pick from provide some cool variety, but all they really require you to do is pick the right one to clear the obstacle and then move on. Most of the time it's just running, jumping, and throwing eggs, but I think that's okay. It's nice to have a game that I can jump through, but really just enjoy the world, and add enemies to my museum. Oh, fuck!
7 out of 10!